The Warframe community is pretty used to Ashe's damage output looking like this. But what if I told you it should actually look like this? In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to deal the most amount of damage possible on Ashe, how to play him comfortably, and break down common community recommended builds that might be harming your damage output. First, let's talk about Ashe's abilities. His first ability, Shuriken, lets Ashe throw 5 shurikens to deal damage. With his Seeking Shuriken augment equipped, these shurikens also strip enemy armor, but because of the intricacies of Ashe's kit, we're not going to be needing this ability or its augment at all. That turns Shuriken into our subsume slot, where we'll use the Helm system to throw on the Silence ability from Banshee. Silence might seem like an odd choice, it is a crowd control ability after all, and why would Ashe, a Warframe that's supposed to stay invisible and kill a ton of enemies, need a crowd control ability? It's actually because of Silence's augment, Savage Silence. Savage Silence increases our finisher damage by 300%, and this is important because Ashe's ultimate ability, Bleedstorm, counts as finisher damage. So Silence is a nice crowd control ability that stuns enemies, switches off Eximus enemies' abilities, and increases Bleedstorm's damage output. Smokescreen is Ashe's second ability that is just a simple invisibility ability. Press it to go invisible. Teleport, on the other hand, is a more interesting ability. This used to be the ability that everyone would clown on and subsume off, but now, because of its augment, Teleport Rush, it's worth keeping on. Teleport combined with Teleport Rush enables Ashe to teleport to a single enemy and do a finisher attack on them. If you successfully kill that enemy that you teleport to, which you will because you're going to have Silence active, you're going to regain 50% of the energy spent on casting Teleport. Then, because of the Teleport Rush augment, you'll add 5 seconds of duration to your invisibility on Smokescreen. If you happen to teleport into a Mercy kill, you'll fully refresh the duration of Smokescreen. So if you're pressing teleport from time to time, pointing at weak enemies, you should be invisible at all times. Perfect for players that get scared and just want to hide in a corner. I'm kidding, of course. You're a space ninja. You're actually using it to get up to 30% bonus parkour velocity, so you can bullet jump away from enemies instead. Now we're moving on to the good stuff, Bleedstorm. Bleedstorm is Ashe's ultimate ability that allows Ashe to mark enemies for death after looking at them. Once you've looked at an enemy and you've marked them, recast Bleedstorm to send Ashe's clones to backstab them and finish them off, dealing massive damage. The important thing to note is that it deals finisher damage, which bypasses all defenses and targets enemy health directly. So how do all of these abilities actually tie together? Silence stays active at all times to buff Bleedstorm's damage output and crowd control enemies. You should keep your invisibility up at all times too by making use of Teleport to extend or refresh its duration. You can then comfortably cast Bleedstorm from the safety of your invisibility to deal with all the enemies around you. To make these abilities work properly, we need to invest into ability strength, range, and duration with a heavy emphasis towards ability strength. Investing into the ability stats would be pointless if we didn't have the energy to actually cast our abilities in the first place. So for energy sustain, we're going to be equipping Equilibrium and Prime Flow. You can use the normal version of Flow if you don't have the Prime version. Our range and duration are quite easy. We equip Stretch for range and Prime Continuity for duration. Again, you can use the regular version of Continuity if you don't have the Prime version. The difference between the Prime version of Continuity versus the regular version is only 3 seconds of invisibility duration, which remember, we can refresh with our teleport, so it's no big deal. When it comes to ability strength, this is where things get expensive. Ideally, we want to equip a max rank Blind Rage and Transient Fortitude, then a Power Drift mod in the Exilus slot. The thing with ability strength on Ashe is that it does 2 things. It increases the amount of damage Bleedstorm does, but it also increases the amount of bonus finisher damage that Savage Silence provides. However, this amount of strength is only necessary for level capping in Void Cascade. It allows Bleedstorm hits that don't crit to still one-hit kill level 9,999 fracs. If you don't intend on running endurance missions, you can opt for a lower strength value and set up a build for more duration and or range for more comfiness. I've also opted to invest 5 Tau-Forged Crimson Archon Shards, granting a bonus 15% ability strength each for a total 75% bonus. This is mainly for big number dopamine. Shards are not necessary for this build to work at all, as there's no special breakpoint values that we need to hit, and we don't have to worry too much about our casting speed because we're going to be invisible at all times. Now that we've set up a build for Ashe, we need to move on to modding his shadow clones, which use melee mods. On our clones, we want to be running Condition Overload, Prime Pressure Point, and Spoiled Strike for the highest amount of base damage possible. Then we run a Covert Lethality and Finishing Touch mod, as these two mods increase finisher damage. Better still, they're multiplicative to Savage Silence. A Prime Beam mod, if applicable, for increased damage for our slash procs if needed. You can swap this out for an Elemental mod if you don't have or don't want to use a Bane. And in that case, Prime Fever Strike is probably the best option. We're going to use Berserker Fury for our attack speed, as attack speed will actually speed up Bladestorm's casting animation. The max attack speed that Bladestorm can hit is 55%, and Berserker Fury allows us to hit that value with one low-cost mod and makes up for the minus 20% attack speed from Spoiled Strike. Finally, we slot Galvanized Steel, giving us 120% bonus crit damage when fully stacked, as well as a little bit of crit chance, which to be honest doesn't really help us much because the base crit chance of Bladestorm is 5%, but hey, we're taking what we can get. If you were to run this basic mod setup on both your Ashe and your Bladestorm's damage output would look like this. Oh, but what's that in the middle of the screen? That is Bladestorm's melee combo count. The more Bladestorm hits that you do within a certain time limit, the higher your combo multiplier and the more damage Bladestorm is going to do. As you can see, this combo decays as you don't land hits with Bladestorm, which isn't what we want. There's a strong way to actually counteract this. The best way to counteract combo count decay on Ashe is by equipping an Arcane on your Bladestorm called Melee Crescendo. This Arcane drops from Netracells or Deep Archimedia and reads, on finisher kill, gain 6 initial combo for the rest of your mission. This is great for us because Bladestorm only counts as finisher damage, so when we get a kill, it's a finisher kill. A rank 5 Melee Crescendo obviously builds up our combo a lot faster, but lower ranks will eventually achieve the exact same result. There's no limit to the total amount of initial combo that you can build up until you hit the maximum possible combo of 240. So what that means is that the more finisher kills that we do, the higher our initial combo per hit is gonna get. By having Melee Crescendo equipped to our Shadow clones, this means that we're always gonna be dealing the maximum amount of damage possible from our Bladestorm. What I've went ahead and done is capped out my Melee Crescendo, so now whenever I cast Bladestorm, you can see that I'm still dealing a very high amount of damage, but that combo counter just doesn't pop up anymore. This is because we're already at the permanent 12 times combo. So not only does this Arcane make an extreme damage buff easy to achieve, it also clears up some of the screen clutter. Nice. If you've watched some videos on Ashe prior to watching this one, you might be asking yourself, Flynn, why don't you just subsume on Wrathful Advance from Kullervo? It increases our melee crit chance by like 300%. The problem with Wrathful Advance builds on Ashe specifically is the return on investment and the fact that crit chance isn't all that much of a hard stat to increase, implying you know where to get it from. The fact is that no matter which build you go for, be it the Savage Silence one or the Wrathful Advance build, you're still going to deal millions upon millions of damage and one-shot every enemy in the game. If an enemy has 1,000,000 health, it doesn't matter if your Bladestorm does 100 million damage or 1.1 million damage. They're gonna die either way. I personally believe that the Savage Silence build does more overall damage, is easier to acquire, easier to play, and far more flexible when it comes to modding. Wrathful Advance, outside of its crit buff, is a very clunky ability that requires constant recasts, leading to worse energy economy, and a more micromanagey playstyle for a lesser payoff when compared to the Savage Silence build. And that's not even mentioning farming a second Kullervo. For most players, that's a pain in the butt when compared to just picking up a Banshee from your clan's dojo. Still, there are some really easy ways that we can get more damage out of our Bladestorm by sourcing some flat crit chance from places other than Wrathful Advance to take advantage of Bladestorm's crit damage multiplier. In that case, I would recommend running Arcane Avenger, and this reads, on damaged, 21% chance to increase critical chance by 45% for 12 seconds. This is flat crit additive after modding. Because Bladestorm has such a pitiful amount of crit at 5% base, this takes our Bladestorm from 10.5% crit chance to 55.5% crit chance. For this to work, we need a way to damage ourselves, and for that, I recommend equipping as low of a rank as possible of Combat Discipline in your Aura mod slot. So this means every single time that we get a kill, we're going to lose 2 health, and that gives us a 21% chance to activate Arcane Avenger. If we pair that with an Adarza Kavat equipped with the Cat's Eye mod, the Adarza Kavat on its own is going to grant us with 60% increased critical chance for 10 seconds to all allies within 25 meters every 20 seconds, also being additive to other mods. That 10-second duration can be increased by the mod Tech Enhance for a 30% increase. This takes our final Bladestorm crit chance to 115.5%. So now that our critical chance is higher, completely eliminating the need to run Wrathful Advance, we can increase our crit damage multiplier. On your Adarza Kavat, equip the mod Tenacious Bond for a bonus 1.2x crit damage multiplier. And then on Ashe, equip Arcane Crepuscular for a bonus 30% ability strength and plus 3x final crit damage multiplier when invisible. With this setup, without external help from sources like a primer, you can expect to deal around 70 million damage per normal yellow crit, then roughly 140 million damage when you orange crit, and that's by doing nothing other than using Bladestorm to build up your combo and then having both invisibility and silence active. The same setup without priming, but this time using Wrathful Advance with max combo, you're going to see around 33 to 43 million per stab, and that is a significant difference in damage. It's just that there's red numbers and they look cooler. When you're watching Warframe videos on YouTube and someone is displaying the amount of damage that they're dealing, you want to be really careful and pay attention to the amount of status effects and, more importantly, the amount of viral procs that someone may have on an enemy before dealing damage to them. The truth is, any Warframe or weapon's damage output can look impressive whenever the enemy has 10 viral procs applied. But moving on from that, let's go ahead and take a look at a few of our weapon options. For weapons on Ashe, I recommend the Dread Incarnate, the Epitaph or Nuker, and then finally the Glaive Prime. On the Dread Incarnate, we're using Unseen Dread, and this is a mod that helps us upkeep our invisibility. On top of that, we're using Spectral Serration. This is a damage mod that has a greater value than a normal Serration, but we have to be invisible for it to work. On the Epitaph or Nuker, we should use Secondary Fortifier to give us an extra layer of defense and make us status immune while we've got Overguard. We're choosing either the Epitaph or the Nuke specifically because we want to be priming enemies to really make the most out of our Bladestorm's damage. Because remember, we've got Condition Overload equipped. Then on the Glaive Prime, we rock a build that looks like this while using Melee Crescendo, which we can easily build up for the Glaive, specifically by teleporting to weaker enemies with Silence active. This is going to allow you to keep the Glaive at 12x combo as well, so if you're getting bored of one-shotting enemies by looking at them with Bladestorm, now you can one-shot enemies by throwing your Glaive at them. The Glaive Prime pairs very well with Ashe's passive, which is slash status effects inflicted on enemies deal 25% increased damage and last 50% longer. But with all that being said, that's everything that you need to know about how I would recommend playing Ashe. If you liked the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, become a member for early access to upcoming videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.